All right, this is kind of like been this passion of mine because I got into VR because of immersive theater, and everything's kind of just going back around right now. I don't know who was in the talk here before, but the last talk was about how video games came into live, and mine is more about how like live comes into VR. So, juxtaposition. So anyway, hi. You heard my bio, kinda. So when I thought about this talk after Noah came to me, I thought about like what does everyone here have in common? Because everyone does slightly different things. Everyone's talking about not yet being defined, not wanting to define it. Because yesterday in our discussion about what question was going to happen during that immersive town hall, one suggestion was possibly like, what is immersive theater? And people were really hesitant to even begin creating this definition. But the thing that I really thought about and found that connects us all is it's sparkly eyes. So I think all of us have this kind of goal and have probably done it because we've experienced ourselves, is go through something so incredible that your eyes are just kind of like going like this when you leave it. And I think many of us are trying to make stuff that we're able to give these experiences to other people. So how many of you had sparkly eye? Okay, for those of you who don't, I made a definition. An effect from an experience, real or imagined, that leaves one with a feeling of wonder when after the experience, the everyday world looks and feels different. So an example is, after I saw Then She Fell, I had sparkly eyes. I thought my doorman was a pirate. My sparkly eyes from seeing Punch Drunk Show made me think Rush Hour on the subway was a carefully choreographed dance. So, in case. So just a little bit about how I got into this space. Like Jenny mentioned, I worked in film, and some of these titles that I really got to see the power of storytelling transforming people. And there were passive films. It was exciting, but the thing I realized was that really it just like affects the brain. It's a cerebral experience when you're watching this documentary. Also made people really sad. Like in a good way, it changed people, but it also just brings people down. And it didn't really create this effect of sparkly eye. So many years ago, I think many of you up here are familiar with Burning Man. And I remember the first year that I went when I was really frustrated with my job. And I know Burning Man's super cliche right now, but that's part of my story. So, so that was like a powerful experience where everyone was a participant and everyone was activated, and it was definitely a week of sparkly eye. So I thought, what was that kind of that magic potion? And to me, it was that mixture of immersion and interactivity. And then that kind of dug into my journey where I discovered like interactive web-based storytelling. Welcome to Pine Point was a big one for me from the National Film Board of Canada on their digital department. People hacking Kinect sensors. And I'm so sad that just kind of like didn't happen because there's just so much hope in interactive storytelling with Kinects. But putting yourself into the story and projection mapping was something that I loved, being able to take a physical space and how your body felt when a physical space was actually transformed. And so I went down this path of the magic kind of being between the space of art and tech. And that took me to working at Sundance New Frontier and discovering what everyone was doing and Future of Storytelling. Charlie, who runs Future of Storytelling, is right there. So it was one of the best jobs I had. I basically lived in New York for 2 years and just went and found the most interesting things that were in New York. So if you want to talk about a job, talk to Charlie. And then this brought me to my quest for VR. And in all honesty, I wasn't fully in love with VR at first, but I always felt like there was something there. There was this slight isolation of what people were doing because it was all kind of location-based. There weren't really communities. So to me, this kind of felt like the opportunity where people can bring everything that they're creating to something containable, to something that can live inside of people's houses. And when I was at Sundance, we brought Oculus to New Frontier that first year that Oculus was there, and you can tell when storytellers looked at it, there was just like the beginning of sparkly eye, so you kind of knew that something was there. So I think a lot about how immersive design fits into VR. Because my inspiration does come from immersive theater and does come from live acting and does come from that connection that I have when I have a powerful moment and a powerful experience. And it has its benefits, but it definitely has its challenges. So today I wanted to talk about 4 concepts. There's, as related to a couple projects that I'm gonna show you and get more deeply into. One is the onboarding and offboarding when it comes to VR. Another one is awe and surprises, stakes and relationships, and story and interactivity. And so, yeah, rather than going down a laundry list of learnings, I think I've worked on over 20 projects over the past couple of years. I really wanted to focus on 2 in relation to this because I felt like it connected more to the immersive theater kind of space. So I'm going to talk about one project that I worked on that launched, and that's Coco VR, where it's really kind of push about fun, and another one that has not yet launched, and its first chapter is going to premiere at Sundance, and it's called Wolves on the Walls, and the director, Pete Billington, is here. So, woo! And we're going to have a larger conversation afterwards. And also, Wolves on the Wall worked really closely with Third Rail, which is super, super exciting. How many of you have seen Coco VR? Cool, so you won't know much about it. So this is the project that we did with Pixar in collaboration with Magnopus, and this was Pixar's first VR project, and it was based off of Coco. Here is a little trailer. Surround sound of the laptop right here. If you put your ears like this, it might help. So as you can tell, it's highly interactive. It really takes the world.
Whoa, this is amazing!
Oh, really?
And it has social co-presence, so you can do it with up to 4 of your friends.
Wow!
So dope.
You did good! Let's do it all again!
You can see Disney created the trailer too. It has that Disney touch. So the Pixar project, we really thought a lot about what can we do that Pixar, that's not replicated what Pixar is masterful at. They're amazing and masters at passive storytelling, at rectilinear storytelling. A lot of VR people now call films flatties. It's really taken off in the VR community. So the decision was really making it all about the audience, and I think it really succeeded in that. The next one is Wolves on the Walls, and this is based on the Neil Gaiman book, like I mentioned, and it's about a character named Lucy, and she hears wolves on the walls, and she wants to let people know her family, but her family doesn't believe her. So you play the part of her imaginary friend, trying to help her from these wolves. And it's gorgeous. And it was a project that was started at Oculus Story Studio. And when Oculus Story Studio shut down, a great team of people from the company started a different company, and the project passed on. So it's a really special one, and I'm really happy it lives on. So with the first concept, the idea of onboarding and offboarding, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because this is something that's very, very challenging for VR, especially consumer VR. You don't have the control of priming people. People might be in their basements, people might be at a party. You don't have control of shifting their mindset and getting them emotionally ready for what you're about to give them. So, and I think that's really hard. It's really hard for creators to do that. I mean, immersive theater is so great at that. You come into a space, it's a music, it's a way that you're acted, it's a way that you come dressed, and you're already open. There's like an emotional openness to the experience that allows you to really take it in. So an example of that also is like Carne and Arena, the Speakeasy even here. I don't know how many of you have gone, but everyone gets dressed up, and once you're dressed up, it's like you're basically at the Speakeasy. So with Coco, we start you and this is Miguel. I don't know how many of you watched the movie Coco either, but this is Miguel and this is his ofrenda, and he tells you a story. And you're not yet with your friends in there. And then all of a sudden, when you got popped in, you see yourself, and you see that you're this skeleton figure. And after Cecile comes and she tells you, you need to get ready for your performance, you're beckoned to come closer to the table, and there you can realize that you can dress yourself. So you need to dress yourself to begin going on your journey in the land of the dead. And you get to pick from these blazers or skirts. You can change your head. You can wear pigtails. There's an array of hats. There's a record player, so you can get yourself in the mood of changing. So you already feel connected to the space that you're at. You feel like you're an important part of it. But you also, since you put the clothes on, you've primed yourself. You've primed yourself to really kind of go on your adventure. So then with Wolves on the Walls, the onboarding starts with the credits, which is really cool. You're looking at the credits and you have these hand-drawn hands, and there's a flashlight there. And when you grab the flashlight, you can use the flashlight to open the credits or to look at the credits, because the credits start shining on. And so I think from that first instance, you recognize that you're an important part of that story, that you're someone that's going to be in there. Then with Awe of Surprise, starting with Coco, once you're primed and you feel part of the world, you start entering through this alleyway. And I took a bad screenshot, which is why we're not recording these things. It doesn't even not like that. And I think what's really interesting is, so you come from this great, beautiful room, and you enter through an alleyway. And I created this thing last year. It's called DevLab, which I think some of you participated in, where I brought independent VR developers and professionals from various interdisciplinary professions like immersive theater, architecture, experience design, magic, to talk about how their profession connected to VR to expand these people's projects. So one really interesting session was with the architecture session. And they talk about when you go from one huge space to like another huge space, it's important to create a sense of sensory deprivation. So sometimes they create hallways between spaces. So things get a little bit darker, things get a little bit narrowed, and then when you walk into the new space, you can be in the space of like awe and the space of grandeur because your senses weren't ready for it. It creates this level of the unexpected. So these are just some beautiful shots of when you walk into the middle of it, and it's all around you. And the whole thing about Coco is that you're led by your curiosity. So it's all full of special little surprises that create that Disney magic. For instance, there is this tree with bulbs. So you think, what do you do with bulbs? You touch it, and once you touch a couple of them, all of a sudden they all light up magically and start playing Remember Me. And then you turn around and you see these sticks on a bench, and you pick it up, and all of a sudden they're sparklers. So you're looking at it and this music just starts playing, you have sparklers in your hand, and the world, even though it's virtual, you started getting used to it, kind of transforms all over again. And then within this space, there's just so much to do. And then again, we play with this idea of constriction and expansion of space. So you go into the elevator when you're going up and you're going on your way to the gondola, and again, it kind of cuts off your senses a little bit until you go upstairs and you can play again. There's a paper airplanes that you can throw off the balcony, and if you do it for long enough, you can get really, really good. Just kind of like the right angle that you do. And then you get taken on this incredible gondola ride where the city like fully opens up to you. And then it goes dark for a second, and before you know it, you have to perform. And the whole time, characters haven't really been talking to you. It's you if you're alone or if you're with a friend. And so it's mostly just been pressureless. And then all of a sudden you go in and Hector's like, you have to sing. And so you sing in order for the performance to start. And then when the spotlight's on you, the characters in back mimic your movements. So when you put your hands up, the characters in the audience put their hands up. So you feel this pressure to really perform. And then there's these maracas there. And so you just have to keep on going because you feel like you're going to disappoint them if you just stand there and be really boring. And then it ends with these fireworks. So it just goes through these series of unexpected things along the way that continue to push your curiosity forward and continue adding that level of awe a little bit. I gave a talk before around the concept of awe because I'm really fascinated about it. There's actually the study of awe in Berkeley. There's a professor that just like fully studies this concept of awe. And he says when you're in this feeling of awe, your boundaries start coming down. You're more open to the things around you. You're also more balanced and you can make clearer decisions. So trying to emulate that, it's a similar thing that happens to you in nature when you see something really grandiose. So how do you emulate that, especially in a VR experience? With wolves, I'm going to use the same pictures kind of over and over with wolves because there's only like 3 that have been publicly shown. So I'm just putting them in different sizes and rotating them a little bit to make you think that they're a little bit different. So there's a bunch of surprises in wolves, but the one I wanted to mention was there's a scene in there, and so it's a really special scene, and Pete can talk about it more. But there's a point where Lucy hands you something. And she does so in a special way that again Pete can talk about more, is something that Third Rail taught about. And you go to grab it, and then you realize you have no hands, and it seems like how many people end up grabbing it? It's probably like 100% of people, right? Yeah. Yeah, even though you have no hands and you know that it's an interactive experience. And then Lucy recognizes it and she looks at you, in kind of a funny way, and she takes a chalk and she hand draws your hands, and then finally you have hands that you could play with, which is really, really cool. The next one is around stakes in relationships, and this is also a really, really hard one for VR because it's not real. So are there really any stakes? In a live theater situation, you know that there's another person there. So there's always social pressure. There's always peer pressure when you meet someone and you know that you're there, even though you're in a theater situation. If you're on bad behavior, they might look at you badly. If you're not doing something right, it might be a strange experience. But the one thing people want to do when they go inside a VR is to just break everything. They want to throw things. They want to see what doesn't work. It's just this natural thing people really, really want to do in VR. So how do you create stakes when it's not real consequences? And with Coco, the social co-presence component, I think, is incredibly valuable here. And this is the first social project that I worked on, especially in the non-gaming space, and something that we're going to focus much more heavily on. And it just makes it really, really powerful. The thing that I really noticed within social VR, especially in something as beautiful as Coco, is when you go through that experience, you feel like you just created a stronger bond with that person that you're with, because your inhibitions go down. You're like a skeleton character with wearing funky, funky clothes. You don't have that personal space. You can get up in someone's face. You can take off someone's head and throw it. You can throw things and laugh. And you feel like you just went on a trip somewhere. It's similar to taking a trip with a friend, and you created this memory with each other that once you take it off, you've actually, you do feel like you're a little bit closer to that person that you're with. I mean, one thing that was also really cool about social VR is that Pixar and Magnopus worked on it in different places. So Pixar's in Emeryville, Magnopus is down in LA, and they worked on the project by being in it together and taking each other through and pointing things out. What else do I have to say about social? Yeah, it's really what drives and creates emotion within the experience. This is a picture. You can take a selfie in there. So this is me and my colleagues. Guess which one's me?
The mustache.
Yeah, little short girl. So so it also measures your height. So I'm short in real life and made short in VR. Come on, VR is supposed to be the place where you can do things that you don't have to do. But this is actually really fun. I love my coworkers, but we did this and we were just laughing the whole entire time. And I just remember this as a strong bonding moment. So with wolves, it's all about the character. It's all about the story, and I think Pete's been doing a great job of making you respect the character and making you respect the story. So that's where the relationship comes. It's that character development of the space, and they use such incredible immersive theater techniques to really guide you in a special way, to not want you to break things, to have you feel connected to Lucy to Lucy the character. And then with interactive, okay, so this is like a really big topic, interactivity in story. I think this is a problem that everyone is trying to solve, and I'm not going to solve it here, but maybe a few of us should like rent a cabin for a month and just like dig into it. And then we can have like a week-long conference to really share all of our learnings, because I think this is always the problem to solve, is how do you create something where there's agency or illusion of agency, but you're still guided, that there is still a directorial experience that someone's created and taking you through there. So I'm just going to connect to it as in how it was focused on these two projects with Coco and with Wolves. And Coco was, like I mentioned, it was all about leaning in to your curiosity. It was that combination of awe and surprises that kept you going. And in all honesty, the story was hard to put in there because original animation is very expensive. Original animation with Pixar creators is much more expensive. Try to keep the budget down. But the challenge that we found here was that there were these passive moments where, like Miguel in the beginning, he's telling you about where you are. There's Cecile who comes into the dressing room and tells you what you're about to do. And there's Hector at the end. It was really hard once you get people into the mode of touching and interactivity to have them sit back and listen to it. So with this was a strong decision, and really limiting that as much as you can, or as much as we could, to have people create their own stories. And that's really, it's kind of that Sleep No More approach. It's kind of like that approach of the stories created through the journey that you decide to take yourself in. And Coco really leaned into that. And it worked. Like I'm now like a registered tour guide of Coco. I've taken so many reporters through it and so many people through it that every time they leave it, there's like sparkly eyes yet. So Wolves also has elements of being led by your curiosity, but every step of it is really in service of the story and the service of the character. And like I mentioned, Pete and the team worked really closely with Third Rail in understanding how to guide the user's attention. In Dev Lab, we had Zach Morris from Third Rail come, and he was giving this workshop on how do you guide the audience member, how do you make them want to follow you, and he was talking about everything leading with the sternum. Like, this is how people do it, I guess. It works really well because Third Rail is my favorite thing. And a lot of those elements do connect to Wolves in the Walls, of how Lucy moves and the gestures that she has that really beckons you forward. And also that the focus of interactivity here is all about subtlety. It's not about this blatant thing of all the things you can do and touch that a lot of VR experiences are, that creates a lot of gimmicky, a lot of people call as gimmicks in VR, although interactivity within VR is blatant. It can be super, super, super fun. But here it's all about the natural ways that humans act and that humans move. So an example of it is an intuitive gesture of just like brushing something aside, where you don't notice that you are brushing it aside or that it's actually there, but it's something that you're doing as human, and I think it furthers what your experience of being human in a VR space is, and creates more of that bridge between this live theatrical component that you can feel with a real actor in place with the virtual reality experience. And it's also like huge use of immersive theater and regular theater with lighting and guiding you in spaces, knowing spaces that you're not supposed to go in, things you can't really touch, things that are kind of touched. But again, it's all in service of the story, and this is also risky because it's so complex in what they're doing. But most likely audiences aren't going to know the complexity that it's going to take. And part of that is, like, I hope and we're starting to get to this at Oculus, where we're creating more seamless experiences of like hubs. So right now VR is very fragmented. When you go in the store, you have to open up an application, and then once you're done, you have to close it and find another application, versus actually being in this virtual world and seamlessly going from one space to the other, and then also having a social hub that you're able to jump into places together. But with this kind of subtle interactivity, where people have slightly different experiences depending on where they look, the thing that I think will really help it is once there's like a social hub where people can discuss the experiences that they've had. So Sleep No More has that with the bar, and Then She Fell has, no, actually Then She Fell kicks you out afterwards and you have to go on your own, really confused about what just happened. This is a picture of Pete and mocapping with the third rail actor, which is really cool. And in trying to really take the first steps in naturally guiding you. So back to this, it was onboarding and offboarding, on surprises, stakes and relationships, and story and interactivity. And so what's next for us, and how are we thinking of continuing to push it forward? One thing that I'm super, super excited about that we haven't announced a project is I'm working on a project with Tender Claws. I don't know if you know them.
Yes.
They created virtual reality for Daydream, and they're just like a really unique team. And I was at Future of Storytelling where we found a project called Pry that they made, which is an interactive novella. And this is the first project that we're going to start incorporating live actors within the VR experience. So you open up the application, you go on this journey. You don't really know who's real or not real. There's going to be a live actor mocapped in a studio at that exact same time, and they could take you and find you and take you on this kind of one-on-one experience and this journey. And so I'm super excited about kind of those steps forward, because it is going to take a little while to create CG, AI, natural human interactions. So really having people that'll take you is going to be a really unique experience. So watch out for that. I'm super excited about it. And that's my talk. Thank you.